My name is Eric McCabe, and you're listening to the Zen Disc Golf Podcast.
Hello, friends, and welcome to another episode of the Zen Disc Golf Podcast. Today, I have a very special guest for you, #Team Dynamic folks, and you're going to love it. I have Eric McCabe on the show, and we're going to talk about a bunch of stuff. His professional career, what goes into developing a signature disc, the process of course design, the best way to grow disc golf. We're going to, brainstorm some of that. He even gives some tips on how to get sponsored by a disc manufacturer, so you guys don't want to miss that. Before we get started, I just wanted to say thank you again for supporting this podcast by subscribing and sharing. And to show my appreciation, beginning this week, I'm going to start doing regular giveaways on the cast. I don't have it in my hands right now, but I will tell you I'm going to be giving away a beautiful Lady Justice stamped Blue Prime Burst Judge. So that kind of goes with the whole Eric McCabe dynamic disc thing today. So stay tuned to our social media accounts. As soon as it arrives, I'll be posting an image and letting everyone know how to get it. But guess what? You guys are first to know about it, and it's super simple. All you have to do is subscribe to this podcast on YouTube and make a comment under this video, something related to what Eric and I are getting ready to talk about. Our favorite comment will win the disc and a Zen Disc Golf Mini, and maybe some stickers. Easy as that. Subscribe, make a comment. That's about it. So let's get to the meat and potatoes of this podcast. My guest is a world champion disc golfer, tour director, course designer, the dynamic disc team manager, and one of the greatest putters to ever play the game. Ladies and gentlemen, Eric McCabe. Eric, how are you, sir?
I'm doing well. It's been warm. It's been unseasonably warm, I guess you would say, here in Emporia, Kansas. And so we've been getting out and doing a lot of disc golfing and doing a lot of videoing, actually, with some with Taco and his wife and Denise, of course. We go out and we have a fun little series that we do called Couples Doubles.
Yeah, I saw some of that.
Yeah, that I've been featuring on my my YouTube page, and I think we've recorded like 6 or 7 rounds now. So it's just been a lot of fun just to get out and throw and just have a good time doing it, and the weather's been just absolutely beautiful here.
That's awesome. I was watching Worst Disc with you guys earlier today.
Yes, that's always the worst shot is always, oh man, you got to really like your partner when you're playing Worst Shot because, yeah, it's funny. Doubles is like that meme, that you get mad at your partner for a shot that you couldn't make.
Right.
That's exactly what it is. So we have a lot of fun doing it, though.
That's awesome. I've been enjoying I was telling you before we started the podcast, been really enjoying the new McTaco podcast with you.
Yeah.
And Taco.
Yeah, Brian Shintaku and we've been having a lot of fun with that as well. He had hit me up beginning of the year and said, or towards the end of last year, actually, and just said, hey, you want to do a podcast where we just kind of talk? Cause he's like, he said, you've got a wealth of knowledge on disc golf and touring and a lot of history. And, I just want to talk about it. I mean, him and his wife would come over and we'd have dinner at our house and they'd bring the kids and we have our dogs. So, we would all just kind of hang out and we would just talk. And it's like, why aren't we just recording this and putting this out there for the world, So, I think we're about 5 or 6 episodes in now, and we're having a lot of fun doing it.
That's good. Yeah, and it's definitely enjoyable. I think people really like that format, and that's the kind of format I'm trying to do with mine is just 2 people just talking. Yeah. Nothing like really, like I was telling you earlier, like cookie cutter, like we have this segment, we've got this. The world is just so isolated right now that people just want to be a part of a conversation. And if they can't be in it, they just want to listen.
Absolutely. And I think that speaks volumes for, with the pandemic going on, what has happened from all these YouTubers that have come out of nowhere, disc golfer wise, I mean, you see Simon just doing crazy things on YouTube, getting up to, over 100K subscribers, which is just, I mean, props. That is so phenomenal. I think I have maybe, knocking on 7,000's door. So I'm like, can't imagine, 100K. That's just insane. But the dude, I mean, it's worth it. His content is just so phenomenal. I thoroughly enjoy I am a fan. I'll just say that I am a fan. I'll sit there and watch Simon videos all day long.
Oh yeah, he puts up some great stuff, and he was doing that that Christmas month, the month of December, where he was doing like them frequently, and
Yep, the Vlogmas. I think
Vlogmas,
it was I think him,
and Eagle.
Brody, and Eagle all did it, and they did a video a day, which I've been doing a little bit myself.
Golly,
I can't imagine having to edit and have something ready to go every single day. My goodness.
well, it's funny that you say that because I was going to tell you, thank you so much for coming on this podcast. You're definitely one of the most prolific for a long period of time content producers out there.
Sure.
You're not just a champion, world champion disc golfer, a course creator, but you're known for creating this content forever. And you were around when I first got back into the sport, say around 2010, started putting stuff out. And, I was watching your instructional videos back then.
Yeah. Yeah. And I owe a lot of that to Bobby, Cool Daddy, Slick Breeze, because he had come on around that time and was really wanting to put some content out there. And so we started the McCabe Minute, and we just started doing instructional videos way back then. And we were never living close to each other back then, but anytime that we were around each other, we would just knock out a bunch of videos whenever we could. And I've always really enjoyed taking pictures and doing videos and kind of, I don't want to say giving back, but kind of like giving back, like talking to the fans. I know when I was growing up in the sport, I had a lot of top players that I would follow and had a lot of respect for. And anytime that they gave me, any type of conversation, it made my day, so if I can do that for somebody, man, it makes my day, making someone's day, if that makes sense, as corny as that sounds. But
No.
but I absolutely love it. There's nothing, if you go to my Instagram page, you're going to see, one of probably three things: disc golf, my dogs, and fishing, because those are
Right.
kind of the three things that are really, I love in my life, and I want the world to see it.
Right. And you mentioned Bobby. It was about, I guess, 5 years ago, you were doing the Disc Golf Answer Man. I guess you're still doing that, right?
Yep.
Yeah. And you were on there with Bobby. And I was actually on the Disc Golf Answer Man for just one little episode where I was being interviewed, but you weren't available. So we're bringing it back full circle. I never got to talk to you.
Yeah. Yeah. We always had you on there. It was like weekly, right? Every week you would be on there, right?
No, you had Tim Stewart, the Mind Body Disc guy,
That's
who was
right.
a good buddy of mine. And but I was on there when I dropped the first book just for an interview with Bobby.
Yep. That's what I was thinking of. That's right. Yeah. And yeah, I mean, with the Disc Golf Answer Man podcast, it's just, I mean, Bobby and I have been doing that for years. And then, over the years, we've had a lot of great content. People come in and, Dixon was there for a little while, and Robert had come in and done some stuff, Danny and Anthony. And, as sad as we are all to see Robert go, he's stepping away from disc golf and stepping away from pretty much everything to move back to Texas to raise his kid and let little Owen be close to family, which, I definitely respect that decision, and he'll be missed, but Bobby and I always have a great time when we record the show. So I don't see us slowing down anytime soon on Disc Golf Answer Man.
Right. When I got started, I think it was Disc Golf Answer Man, and there was one other, I think it was the Disc Golf Show. And those were the three podcasts, unless there was like some random one-offs or something.
There was a couple. Yeah. I know Mike Solt always did one way back in the day. I can't remember the name of his, but I always enjoyed listening to his, way back as well. But you're absolutely right. It was a small niche market at that point. Now, I mean, goodness, if you search, disc golf on your favorite podcast app, you're going to get a plethora of them, actually. So,
yeah. And it was kind of funny, too, because back then we didn't do video. I don't know. Were y'all doing video from the get-go?
A lot. Because I know when we first started, majority of the time I was still on the road touring, playing, and Bobby would call me, and it would just be a phone call that we would do.
Right.
It wasn't until YouTube started getting a little bit bigger and starting to be able to do live on that platform that we decided, hey, let's film this and put this out that way too.
Right. Kind of funny story. When I decided to come back and do this, do the podcast, one of the first people I was talking to, who was on my last episode, Scott Stokely, he had asked me, are you going to go video or are you going to go audio like you used to? And I said, well, crap, I guess the technology has changed. I think they're going to expect the video as well.
Right.
So yeah, I had to work on my my podcast area so that it was all,
Sure.
you know, ready for I don't have the disc catchers back there, but I got the
Yeah.
tapestry.
Hey, that works. That works great. Yeah. That's funny because when Taco and I first decided to do our podcast, our just kind of meet and greet, talk to people, it was more of I think we even called it a video cast because we didn't really plan to put out audio, until a couple people were asking for it. And so we're like, all right, why not? It's not like it's much extra work to just take that audio and throw it on Anchor or whatever, you want to, whatever platform you're using. And it just, if people want it, we're going to give it to them.
Oh yeah, and I've noticed that the numbers are pretty much the same between YouTube and the people just downloading the audio. It's
Yep.
like I tell people, I want to be a part of your morning drive. I don't want you to look at me while you're driving though.
Right. Just listen to me. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've got a face for radio. So
Exactly. So why don't we just talk a little bit about I try to kind of get in the heads of people I'm talking to and kind of maybe get the story and kind of compress it and put it together for everybody out there. Most people are familiar with Eric McCabe because you've been around for a while. You've done your videos. You've been working with Bobby, Cool Daddy, Slick Breeze. You're out there, but I want to hear your story. You know how you got started and what began to fuel your passion for this sport.
oh sure. So I was pretty fortunate enough. I started playing back in high school is when I first started playing disc golf back in it was 94, I think it was 94, 95, kind of that time frame. And back then I was playing I played baseball as a kid. I did a lot of gymnastics as a kid, traveling. I played on a traveling team and we did all of that. And actually my coach and good friend at the time is their names are Mike Gentry and Jim Ramsey were the two, and both of them are the ones that introduced me to the sport. They had heard about it and gone out and played a couple times. And back then it's kind of full circle right now actually, because the neighborhood that Denise and I live in is the neighborhood I grew up in as a kid. So we've bought a house in this neighborhood, and it's literally across the highway from Jones Park.
Oh,
So
nice.
yeah. So as a kid, obviously I'd hop on the bike and just go ride through Jones Park all day. And then, the older I got, the less I guess I spent in Jones Park, but learning to drive, driving through Jones Park and seeing these disc golf baskets. And back then Jones West was the only disc golf course that we had in town. That was it. And so that's the course that I kind of learned how to play on and really fell in love with the sport on. And hanging out with these guys that I was hanging out with back then, we were all super competitive and always trying to beat each other and trying to get the edge on each other. And so that's what kind of fueled the passion back then. And there was a really good disc golf scene in Emporia even way back in the late 90s, early 90s. And there was leagues. There was two nights a week we would have league, and we'd have 20 to 30 guys come out and play on a Wednesday night and on a Saturday afternoon, which is, that's pretty decent numbers for now
Yeah,
for
sure.
a
Absolutely.
small community. And I think those guys, and I was young, I was kind of like the young kid, and those guys really took me under their wing, and a couple of them, took me to a couple of events. And I met some people like Brian Mace and Brandon Mace, the Mace Man brothers. And 97 it was that Brandon and I hopped in his truck, and we drove down to Texas for an event. And it was the VPO. It was the 1997 VPO. And I didn't have any clue what to expect at this tournament. And I ended up playing intermediate, and I actually won the tournament.
Wow.
So right then from the get-go was kind of like, man, I want to keep doing this. I want to build me, and I want to get better, and I want to play more events and see the world. And I think that was a big part of it for me. And growing up, I wasn't huge. I wasn't a big guy, so I wasn't super like crazy athletic, as like I wasn't going to be playing on the Legion baseball team, or I wasn't a starting running back or anything like that. I would have got plowed out there. So disc golf was definitely a sport that I could compete in. And I felt like I was getting better and better at it. So I went for it, and just started getting better, and got more and more involved with the club, started running my own leagues. And Then, started running my own tournaments. And then all of a sudden, the Emporia Open becomes the Glass Blown Open. Me and a good friend, Gabe Worley, who is still my closest friend, I would say. He's the one that I go fishing with, any opportunity that we have right now. But he's the one, him and I are the ones that started the GBO way back in the day. And, we had 88 players come out for that first year. And that was a lot of people back then, and I'll never forget that
Mm-hmm.
year. It was really special to me. And my folks actually came down and cooked hamburgers and hot dogs for every single competitor, which was super cool. And later on down the road, when I decided, I want to pursue this professionally, I turned pro in 2000 and decided to make it my profession in 2003, which is historically the same year that the national tour started. So before that, there was just A tiers, and
Mm.
there wasn't this national tour, this disc golf pro tour. There was a couple majors still every year, but for the most part, it was just if it was an A tier, it was a pretty big event. There wasn't very many A tiers. Like nowadays, there's 2 or 3 A tiers every weekend. It seems like.
Mm.
So I remember hopping in the car in 2003 and going out to California and playing the first NT, the La Mirada event. It was a Golden State Classic, I think, was the event, and I didn't play too great. It was like my first time like traveling and playing in, a big major event like that. And definitely I came home after that event kind of licking my wounds and was trying to decide if it was something I really wanted to pursue. And actually, it was my dad that sat me down and said, you know what, you got to do this. At least give yourself a year on it and see what happens. And so he's the one that kind of pushed me to do it. And it's been gravy ever since, to be honest with you. I really respect him for kind of, you know, talking to me and always being a good support system, as both of my parents have been throughout my whole life. We've been pretty fortunate. Me and my brother, I have an older brother, and he's 3 years older than me. He lives down in Texas. That's where kind of all my family is now. They've all kind of navigated down to Texas because he had got married early and had a kid, and my parents wanted to be close to the grandkids while I was out, traveling the world playing disc golf. So didn't have much for them here in Emporia anymore. So they all moved south, and my brother is now the general manager of a couple golf courses down in Texas. So, they play golf. The golf is in my family. My parents both play. My brother's a fantastic player, and so that aspect of golf, it's always been there. And I've just been very fortunate to have a family that really has supported me through it all, and
Oh yeah, a lot of
and
people aren't that fortunate. Sounds like you had a big support system with both your parents and your coaches and all.
oh yeah, definitely did. And I still talk occasionally with Jim, the one of the guys that introduced me to it. And I haven't seen Mike in quite a while. It's been probably close to 10 years since I've seen Mike, and he had moved away, so I've kind of lost connection with him. But definitely trying to get back in touch with him at some point, because he was definitely really close back in the day. And he was one of those go-to guys that you could always count on for going to play disc golf.
Right on.
You
You
always
mentioned
have that
early,
buddy that's always good to go.
yeah, you mentioned earlier that there was a group of players that you really admired and you looked up to that were playing back in the day. You care to mention some of those players who you?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. My number one, I would say that I kind of admired and really modeled my game after was Laron Harris. He is 4-digit PDGA number from Kansas City, Missouri. And I would always go up to the Kansas City Wide Open when I first started playing and see these guys playing these final nines. And he was always the one that I looked after, or looked up to rather, and really wanted to model my game after, because he wasn't tall. We're about the same height, and he could mash on a disc, just simply mash on a disc, and it was so much fun to watch. So
So what
uh,
were those elements that he used that you piggybacked on that helped you mash on a disc? With a smaller stature.
flexibility is
Okay.
definitely what it is. Like he's into taekwondo, and he does the karate stuff. And so with that, and with my gymnastics background, you have to have a flexible back and be able to bend every which way. And that power pocket, so to speak. And just being small and compact and everything ripping right out, and less room to, if you're big and tall, you got those long lengthy arms, you should be able to rip on a disc. But sometimes with height comes clumsiness too, and I think that really has helped me is my balance, my core being very balanced, and just being able to rip on some discs is the flexibility is absolutely what helped me, and Laron too as well. So, he was definitely the one that I looked up to, and he's still really close. Like we talk quite often. We're like, at least once a month we're at least texting back and forth. So he's still in my life, and I have a lot of respect for that guy. So he was one. A couple others to name real quick. One of them was just on your show, actually. Stokely was another one that he was traveling, touring the country back then, and he was one of the first guys to do it and do clinics, and show up to your town and have a radar gun and let's see how fast you can throw it. He was just a good dude, so he was one that I looked up to. And Crazy John Brooks, another one that I've always looked up to. He's got a lot of history in freestyle and ultimate and just frisbees in general. And he's just, man, he's never met a person he didn't like, which I have a lot of respect for people that are like that. And, he's a special place in my heart as well. So, and then the last person I'll mention is Kevin Babbitt. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Kevin. He is a local to Emporia back when I was kind of starting to get around and play, like through the late 90s, early 2000s. And he's since moved over to Lawrence, but we were always kind of those two that battled back and forth. And I would always give him a holler and see if he wanted to play dollar matches, where we would play dollar for the front nine, dollar for the back nine, and dollar overall. So it's, $3 rounds is really not that bad. And we'd always keep a tab on each other on who owes who the most dollars. But Kevin was always such a solid player, and it was always fun to battle with him as well.
So the other really interesting thing about Eric McCabe is that you have some of the most sought after signature discs on the market. The Emac Truth, the Mercy. Do you have the Mercy as well?
Mercy for a while. Yep.
And then the Trespass, is that correct?
Yep. The Trespass is was my team series disc that I had a couple years ago. And those were definitely ones that people are always looking for sure.
And we have a new one that's coming out soon that people are really excited about.
We do, and I'm very excited about that one. Obviously, the Emac Judge. I'm a part of the board at Dynamic Discs, and every Tuesday morning we have meetings with kind of the head of each department out at Dynamic, and we discuss everything, all topics, from our new warehouse that we just purchased to, everything, you name it, we're talking about it, right? So we always, beginning or towards the end of the year, we talk about new molds for the following year, and we were kind of due to make a putter, and we love the Judge. The Judge is such a great mold. So many people love the Judge and the Warden.
Mm-hmm.
And, but it's one or the other there. You either have the big bead or you don't have a bead. So, we have the Marshall as well, and the Deputy. We have a couple other putters as well, but they're kind of on their own, as where the Judge and the Warden are kind of our two staples, I would say. And we were talking about doing making another disc, and I'd kind of come forward and said, well, I've always wanted a putter with, a micro bead on it and blah, blah, blah. And next thing I know, we're kind of talking with Thomas, and I'm getting to design my own putter, much like I did my own mid-range, which was, to this day, still blows my mind to look at the bottom of those Emac Truth and see my name engraved in the mold. It's surreal, to be honest with you. And, I owe all of that to Jeremy Rusko and everybody over at Dynamic for allowing that to happen, obviously. But yeah, it's great. I'm super excited about it. I've been putting with it now for about a month while we're out doing all these videos and everything. It's what I've been using. So it's going to be part of the Trilogy Challenge this season. So yeah, it's awesome. I'm really stoked on it.
That's got to be really cool. First of all, just to have disc with your name on it, and one that you helped design, but one that is so popular. The Emac Truth is just, it's one of the most popular discs on the market for a long period of time.
Yeah, it is. It really is. And there's a great story behind that disc too, with the how the first ones that came out were the Verdict, and they were a little too overstable. So we redesigned that and just called it the Verdict. And then when the Truth came out, it was a great flying disc, but it was just a little straighter, and it didn't quite have that fade at the end that I really was hoping for. So we kind of scrapped it and said, well, let's just do what you need, and here we'll send you a few of them, and we'll see what you think about these. And Thomas did that, and I threw them, and I loved them, and that's kind of how the Emac Truth became about, and we didn't know what to call it back then. And I made the suggestion, well, why not just the Emac Truth or something along those lines, and everybody loved it. And it's been great. Yeah. People really love that disc, which is special to me anytime I see somebody posting about it or hitting me up to buy one or for the DDO or GBO block parties when I always do a special run of them every single year for like the ice ones. I did the ice one year, and then last year I did the Fusion X. So I've got something really cool in the works for this year's block party as well. So if anyone's coming down to DDO, they're going to be pleasantly surprised with what I'm going to be getting rid of there at the block party.
Awesome. And so what the process when you're designing these discs, are you just like describing something that you're looking for, like a feel or flight characteristics, or comparing it maybe to another mold that is familiar to somebody else? I mean, how does this process work?
Well, for us, at least at Dynamic, it's we're in contact with Thomas Ekstrom, who is our genius, is what we like to call him, because that guy he's a genius. He's definitely you tell him what you want and he makes it happen. So yeah, for me, it was telling him what I wanted for feel would be the number one. And, I wanted something that felt like a Judge, but didn't have the big bead on the bottom. So the micro bead was instant, and then the flight, how do I want it to fly? And for me, what I wanted out of that disc was somewhere between the Judge and the Warden in flight, which isn't a whole lot of variance right there. They're both pretty close to the same flight. So it is directly in between those two. It's kind of a point and shoot style of putter and thrower, actually. So it just kind of holds that line you put it on. And for me, for putting, I've always been a spin putter and just put that pop on it. And I want it to just fly dead straight with really no variations. I don't want it to turn right or left or anything like that, unless it's a super long putt. But for the most part, when I'm inside that circle, I just want it to go dead straight on a line. And that's exactly what he is, what he's done, what he's made with this disc.
So he produces maybe some prototypes, hands them to you and says, how do these feel? Or is this what we're looking for?
Yeah, he made some prototypes and had sent them over to me. And I actually just released a video. It was probably last week now, of the Emac Judge that I have on my page, and it's me actually opening the box. And that was a legit video. The first time I'd seen those discs is me opening the box and then going out and throwing them. And it was hard not to put that video out because I had it for like a month, and not talking about the disc was hard because I wanted everybody to know how awesome this new putter was. And yeah, he just sent me some protos and I tested them, and I, hit him back up and said, green light, let's go. Let's throw these things in production and see what we can do.
Fantastic. And so you're a fan of the micro bead. Mm-hmm. What makes you a fan of that? Is it just the feel of it, or?
I think it's the feel. For me, the Judge, for instance, kind of has that bigger bead on it, and it always it didn't really get in the way, but you could tell it was there, right? Mm-hmm. And then with the Warden, it's a great flying disc too, but it doesn't have a bead. So it's got that super rounded edge, kind of a blunt edge on the bottom. Right. And it felt like it would catch my finger occasionally and wouldn't quite hold up in the wind like I needed it to. Mm-hmm. So putting a micro bead on, it's going to cause a little bit more stability for it, but it's not going to be just kind of a truce, in your hand. You know it's there, but it's not in the way, if that makes sense.
Sure. And it's kind of funny when you say that, because usually people, blame the bead for it getting stuck in the hand. And you're talking about and I'm the same way. I prefer a beaded putter. So yeah, it just feels more comfortable, and where you're comfortable and confident, you're going to throw them in.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
You're exactly right.
So let's talk a little bit about course design, because, I was telling you before, you're such a unique player, and I get to talk to you across so many different disc design, playing and course design
and team manager as well. I'm also
exactly
team Dynamic and West Side as well.
That's awesome. So let's talk a little bit about course design. Lead me through the process of when they call on Eric McCabe and say, I want a we're thinking about developing a course here?
Sure. So the process will typically take a long time to get through. It can be anywhere. I've done courses where, we've got them done and knocked out within a matter of a couple months, and then ones that have taken a couple years as well. A lot of it just kind of depends on the terrain and all that. But as soon as somebody calls me, the first thing I do is, obviously drill them on what style of course you want, what's your terrain looking like, and then as soon as we get approvals for me to come out, I'll make a trip out to the property. And before that, I'm looking at maps, looking at Google Earth images of the property, and just to get an idea of what it kind of looks like when I get there. So it's not just, I kind of have an idea of what I'm walking into, kind of thing. Unless just like something in the Northeast where it's just completely woods. It's just like, all right, I know what to expect. I'm going to be hiking through these woods for about a week or two. So, but I'll get to the property, and then I'll just kind of walk the property, and obviously meet with the people that are bringing me in to do the course, and get all the boundaries in play, and find out, kind of an idea of where they want the course to start and where they want the course to end, and any limitations that they have, if I need to avoid any areas or problem areas. And really just spend the first 2 or 3 days just walking the property, and hoping that it's a nice day where there's a lot of people out enjoying the park, so I can kind of see where people are navigating to, and
Congregating.
any sidewalks that you got to think about going through the property. And there's really a lot that goes into those first couple days, and then while I'm doing that, getting an idea and walking around, if I find a cool area that looks like it would be a great spot for a basket or a tee pad, I'll mark that spot in a GPS on my phone. So when I go back to the hotel or the house or whatever I'm staying at, I can kind of plug that into my map and kind of remember, okay, this was a cool area that I kind of want to try to utilize in one way. And I'll have that GPS coordinate, And then after those few days, I kind of start laying everything out. And a lot of it's done on maps. A lot of it's done just kind of looking over a map and saying, I think that this would have a good flow to it. And then it's a matter of walking the course and making sure it's going to work. A lot of times, if it's a more open style course, throwing discs, if possible, taking a rangefinder out there and getting distances down. There's a lot that actually goes into that side of things. So you don't just design a course that has like 9 200-foot holes, or, it's repetitive. You don't really want that. So, it's a challenge because you got to make sure it's a tough course. It's a quality course, and the flow's good, and there's a lot that really does go into that. But when I finally am ready to move forward, and I have a great idea of the layout, I'll take ground whiskers actually and plug those into the ground, and then take GPS coordinates, and then if possible, walk the city or the club through the course and kind of give them my insight on it and let them know, here's what I'm thinking on this. What do you think of that? And if everything's a green light, I put it all together in a map and send it over. And if everything gets approved, we throw everything in the ground and come back, do ribbon cutting, and kind of go on for there. And one thing that people don't necessarily understand, I think, is just because you have a course and, you design a course and you put one in the ground, for me, it's never done. You can't just put a course in the ground, and then all of a sudden, hey, we're done. We got a course. Let's go. For me, like, I think the Emporia Country Club will speak volumes to this statement is every year we change something on that course, whether it's moving a tee pad, 80 feet, 90 feet, 20 feet, 10 feet, whatever it is, or a new basket placement, or, carving a hole through some woods that they have out there. And whatever it is, we're always looking to, make the course better. And, especially when you live out in Kansas, we lose trees, and then the course is just suddenly, wow, this isn't very much fun anymore. This is just an open, boring hole. So we either got to plant some trees or do some tweaking. So, just because you design a course, it doesn't mean it's done. I'm constantly thinking about all of the designs I've done, and always it's tough because I want to go back and visit all of them, obviously when they've kind of been seasoned, and play them and tweak them, but that's not always a possibility. But I do my best to get back to majority of them for sure.
Yeah, I can totally identify with everything you just said, because I used to have a course that I designed and I lived on. I had 17 acres, and I developed a 18-hole golf course, a disc golf course. The only thing is that I cheated, because I would move the baskets back to where where I would throw.
Right? Yeah, sure. Just throwing shots. All right, we'll put the basket right here.
Yep, this is where I'm going to ace it. That's about I don't know 300 foot out, and
You can do whatever you want there. That's fantastic.
no, because then at the end of the day, you're just like, I can always change it. That was my problem with my own personal course, was that the fact I didn't like, get this, I didn't like the fact that I could just change it at any time. It
Sure.
just didn't seem fair.
Yeah.
And when I had friends come out to play, they would just automatically say it wasn't fair because I built it in the first place.
Sure, absolutely. And you're just beating them down every time. So absolutely.
Well, I wish that was true, but but yeah. So you labeled a few things. You said tough. You said variation. What else makes a good course according to Eric McCabe?
One thing that some of the courses that I've designed that really stand out are courses that, well, honestly, both of them are private courses that I'm thinking of that kind of stand out right now that I've designed. And a lot of it was landscaping, that they had an option to do a lot of landscaping and dressing the course up, whether that's, flower beds around greens or tee pads. And, you'd be amazed at how just looking at a normal fairway and then putting some rocks around the tee pad or adding a bench or any type of landscaping you can do really does dress up that course. And, like the two I'm talking about are the farm, which I'm sure if you guys follow me, you've heard me talk about the farm down in Winfield, Kansas. That place is phenomenal. It is one of my favorite courses I've ever designed for sure. Tyson Jones is the kind of guy that runs the farm out there, and he's got a great relationship with the owner, and it's just an absolute gem of a course. And anytime it's kind of in the middle of nowhere, kind of, it's hard to get to if you're just traveling through Kansas, but it's worth that half hour, 45-minute trek off the beaten path to get out to Winfield and play this course, because it's phenomenal. And he's definitely taken it to that next level by adding a lot of landscaping and just making sure that everybody that comes there and plays has a great time,
Mm-hmm.
And I think that speaks volumes, and having those picturesque holes is a great idea, because
Mm-hmm.
people are going to be like, oh, I've seen this hole before, or
Mm-hmm.
they see it on video and like, I want to go play that hole, I want to go take a shot at that hole, or anything like that. But the farm is definitely one of those courses, and the other one is the reserve at Meyer Lake, obviously up in Wasilla, Alaska.
Mm.
So
Okay.
this course is it's an old camp. It's an old like Boy Scout church camp that has been converted into a like a boutique, actually, in the middle of Alaska. It's phenomenal. When you pull into this place, you'll be blown away. You just come over this little hill and then you see the big lake, and there's acres and acres of woods all around this course. And I spent couple weeks out there 2 years ago just walking through this jungle, is what I call it, because it was untouched nature. Like those woods hadn't been walked through, at least to my level of walking the course and getting to know the property for years and years. So everything was super overgrown. There was crazy wildlife out there, and it was just such a surreal
Grizzlies.
moment. So
Were you
man,
worried about the Grizzlies?
I wasn't, not grizzlies, but I was definitely concerned about running into like a black bear, or honestly a moose, even a big moose.
Yeah.
We did run into a moose on the course, and it scared me. I mean, those things are,
Huge.
yes, like I'm from Kansas and we have big buck out here, like big
Mm-hmm.
old deers, but this moose put them guys to shame. It
Oh
was
yeah.
insane.
It's underappreciated how big moose actually are until you
Yep.
see them like next to a car.
Yeah, I mean, they'll total your car and get up and walk away.
Yeah.
It's
Say thank you, may I have another?
exactly. Exactly. So, but no, the property, Steve and Mike out there it's funny because they've actually become some of our closest friends, and we schedule our vacations around going out there and just hanging out. And we had the Meyer Lake Classic out there last July in 2020, and went up there and ran that event. And we've got it on the calendar again for 2021 in June. I think it's June 26th and 27th, kind of that time frame. And it's another one of those courses. The guy that I got to work with, his name is TJ, and he owns his own excavator, and he did the landscaping for the traditional golf course that's in town. And when he walked that course with me, he wasn't a disc golfer. He still really isn't a disc golfer, but when we walked that property together, his eyes were just lighting up at the opportunity to go through and carve this course out and kind of put his name on it as well,
Sure.
because that's exactly what he was doing I mean, they had to move so much dirt and bring rock in. And I mean, the amount of money, time, effort, blood, sweat, tears that went into that course is just nothing short of phenomenal. And that's really, in my opinion, what kind of helps build a great disc golf course.
How about a good disc golf hole? So if we break it down to the basic elements, you mentioned like signature holes. First of all, I guess we should talk about, do you create the concept for signature holes when you're out there and then kind of build the in-betweeners?
Occasionally, yes. It kind of depends on the property, to be honest with you. But yeah, every course, in my opinion, needs a signature hole, at least one signature hole. And both courses that I just mentioned probably have 4 or 5 signature holes on each
That's
one.
The best.
So it's just one of those, the terrain, the property really allowed that to happen. So, that's kind of, I was fortunate enough in that regard. But for me, a great hole is one of these holes that, there's not a super advantage for a lefty, not a super advantage for a righty. It's somebody that, ideally, if I had some woods and I can carve everything out, it would be, a mirrored image almost of a hyzer versus an Anheuser shot with a lot of trees in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like, you have your opportunities if you want to go forehand or backhand, whatever the case may be. And, around that, I feel like that 320-foot shot of a hole is kind of that spot where, majority of people can enjoy it. So the top pros are wanting to get birdies on those holes, and beginners are happy with a par, getting a 3 on a hole like that. But everybody can play it, and every single person can enjoy it. So that's kind of, that's kind of my perfect hole, I think, is just something that's fair for both lefties and righties. Now, obviously, when I'm designing a championship course, it's a little bit different because for me, I love designing holes that kind of have that 4-digit mark on them for, over 1,000 feet, kind of like we have out the country club. We have, I think, 3 of them out there that are pushing 1,000 feet, that are par 5s, that are just phenomenal golf holes.
It's really interesting when you start looking back at the history of disc golf and at the increase of technology, the increase of the hole actually occurred. And I was talking to Stokely about that a couple weeks ago. These holes back when Ed Hedrick began designing these courses were only around the 200-foot range. And, you didn't hit that in a par 3. I guess his goal was, and this is what Scott told me, his goal was to make sure that everyone could reach the green in one shot. Sure. That's what he wanted. And using the technology that was, back in the day, your basic, whammo discs.
Yeah, it was like a legit Frisbee that they were chucking around back then.
Yeah, but then when, I guess, Dave Dunapus showed up with the Innova and the Champion Disc Eagles and what was the other one? I can't remember. But some of the very first actually beveled disc golf discs, it was a game changer for distance, which meant they had to rethink how they built these courses. Yep. So it's interesting that we're now at this time where you're talking about, the 4-digit numbers. It's not just the technology too, though. It's these guys with these arms too.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's all of those things. It's the younger generation becoming more and more athletic, and it's definitely not just the disc technology, but it's also the basket technology.
Yes, we talked about that too.
Baskets are now, how much those catch. I mean, obviously there's not really a perfect basket on the market that catches every single putt, because think about it, you're throwing something into something. There's freak of natures is going to happen, and it's going to pop out one sometimes,
that's what makes it a game though.
Exactly. That's what makes it fun. So, but yeah, those older Frisbees is what they were, old baskets that they were using back then, like the Mach 1s and Mach 2s were made to catch those bigger Frisbees and not these kind of small, more compact flying discs. So
he was saying you actually had to throw them up and kind of lob them back into the basket, or else they would always blow through. He said that current putting nowadays, it would just blow through.
Oh yeah, yeah. It would just because there was like no chains in them.
Like
It was
10 chains.
yeah, that's insane. Yeah, now
Yeah.
there's like what 25 or something crazy, 28, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's nuts.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's just so interesting that at the increase in technology, they've had to, people like you have had to rethink how to build disc golf course. Well, the change of technology and the change of skill level.
Skill level for sure. And professionalism on courses. Like a lot goes into what style of course I'm putting in. If it's, what's the city's goal for me putting this course in? Are you wanting to host events and bring people to your community, or are you wanting a family to come out and just have a great Sunday and just have a great day and throw one disc around, So I mean, there's so much that goes into it. And I think all these players and disc golfers out there are all saying, man, we need a championship level course in our town. Well, you do, but at the same time, if you don't have a beginner friendly course in your town, and I'm talking a course that has like 120-foot holes, 200-foot holes, maybe pushing like 280 at the most. Those are very important courses to have to grow the sport. If you come to Emporia, Kansas, and we have every kind of course you can think of here. We have from Hammond Park that is just, where we do a lot of our fun videos out there at Hammond Park. Every hole out there is gettable. It's short. It's fun. It's a great course for the college kids and all that. And we also have the country club that is legit right across the street. So you got one extreme to the other. But that said, we have the country club, we have three Jones Park courses now. Peter Pan Park, we have like 3 or 4 9-hole courses in town. And the courses that are always the most popular is Hammond Park, are those pitch and putt easy, because people can go out and just have a good time. And I think people don't necessarily realize that when they see disc golf and, it's in their life so much, and they look up to all these pros and the pro tour and all that. But that is just such a small fraction of our sport, to be honest. I think it's great. I think the more money we can get to the pros, that they can continue to do what they're doing and grow in the sport in their own ways, is fantastic. But there's a lot of kids, there's a lot of college students, there's a lot of families that just go out and they don't even know who Paul McBeth is. They just want to go out and throw, and I think that's great. I think we need more of that.
Are you seeing an increase of having to put in, or not having to, but getting to put in like junior tees and things like that to try to make some of that happen?
Yeah, and that's something that when I design a course, something that I'll always recommend is how many tee pads do you want? How many basket placements do you want? Because for a very small fee, you can put in shorter pin placements that can be moved. Tee pads, I think shorter tee pads is always great. If you have the revenue, the money, the budget to put in a couple different styles of tee pads, a couple lengths here and there, do it. And if you don't, if you only have enough to do the one to start, I always say start with the challenging ones and then put a natural pad in kind of for the shorters until you can raise the money to put in a real concrete pad there as well, or turf, whatever you're looking to do. And that's another thing when I design courses that I kind of try to encourage cities to do is don't put in concrete pads or turf pads. Don't put in tee pads right away. If you have the terrain and you can play on natural pads for just even a couple weeks to a month, and you can really see if you need to change anything, do some tweaks here and there. It gets more challenging to do that when you're putting concrete down into the ground and you got to suddenly move a tee pad 20 feet because of a flow issue or a safety issue or something like that.
Yeah, I bet. I've noticed a lot of the courses around where I am. I'm in Virginia. I'm near Williamsburg. Are beginning to retrofit and start add some of those junior tees in.
Yeah, I think they're great. I think they're fantastic, especially with as many kids as you see playing these days. And a lot of people have asked me this question: what's your favorite tournament to either go to or attend? And hands down, Junior Worlds is one of my favorites. And we've been fortunate enough. Granted, last year we didn't get to host it because of COVID, but the 2 previous years and next year we're hosting is the Junior World Championships, and that is such a fun week to go out and watch these little kids just mash on discs, and just the passion that they have is. And I'll never forget, I think it was 2013 I think it was 2013. I think that was Am Worlds, but the juniors were here then. and I can't remember the kid's name, but he threw a forehand on the island hole at the country club. They had a shorter tee, but he aced it. And I was one of
Wow.
the guys that was driving the cart back and forth, shuttling people back up to hole one. And I was sitting there right there and watched him ace it. And man, you've never seen someone get more excited for an ace than that kid's dad. And it's like, it almost makes you tear up watching the just pure enjoyment, that kid had, that his dad had watching that. And man, that really made my year, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I bet that's amazing. How about some of these 5 to like 7-year-olds that are getting sponsored by like Innova?
Yeah. And they mash too. I mean, they
Oh
throw
yeah.
these forehands and it's like, good grief. Like, my goodness, I'm scared for the future of disc golf for these kids, because it's going to be you think it's tough now, wait for like 10 years and see what's going to happen, because they're getting younger and better for sure.
As a team leader over there at Dynamic, y'all consider doing any less than 10-year-old and sponsors?
I'm trying to remember our youngest. I can't off the top of my head. I think we have. I think our youngest kid is right around that age, actually, from the Northeast. So we have really good junior team. We have a that we hope to kind of mold into advanced level players, pro level players. One of them that really comes to mind is Isaiah Esquivel. He's been on our team. He was on our junior team for many years, and he's local kid. And this guy, he's 15 years old, and the kid throws like 500 feet and just jams putts, and he has the passion for it. Like, I'm good friends with his dad as well, and he'll text me or shoot me videos of him in the backyard, like when it's cold or raining or anything like that, and he's just back there putting. He's trying to get his 1,000 putts a day in, and that's the dedication it's going to take
Yeah.
for these kids to take the game to the next level, and I absolutely love seeing it.
Oh yeah. So what do you think about, Dynamic has always been all about grow the sport. I think y'all pretty much created the hashtag back in the day.
Yeah, we were definitely one of the first ones using it, for sure.
So in your impression, what does that hashtag mean today? What is the best ways that we're going to um, the most effective and efficient ways that we're going to grow this sport? I've seen it a lot in the past couple years. I
Mhm.
think a big one is the way that we're filming them now
Yeah,
and we're able to present them to the world. But what do you think?
I agree. I agree 100% with that statement. The media is obviously blown up, and there was no media back when I was touring. We didn't have Facebook and all that back then, and it wasn't really video crews out there filming a whole lot. Every now and then we'd have an event where somebody would come out and film, and we thought it was really cool, but nothing to the level of like what Jomez, Central Coast, Gatekeeper, GK, all those guys are doing right now. It's amazing, the
Hmm.
quality of content that they're putting out. And you know kind of sidetrack, I'll go back to that, but talking about editing videos and putting videos together, these guys are putting these together overnight, right?
Right. It's
And
complicated.
it is, it
I've
really is.
learned that doing the podcast now with video, and I'm
Right.
like, golly.
Yep, I get to edit and cut and paste and make sure everything's good, like props for sure. And it's
Hmm.
pretty awesome to see. But as far as the grow the sport hashtag, what it means to me, and where I see the future, I see two different roads, and I think Dynamic Discs does a fantastic job of both of these. One of them is the junior players, and really caring about them, and willing to host the Junior Worlds 3 years in a row, right here in Emporia, and grow the sport from the youth side of things. And if you come to Emporia, you will find a disc golf basket, at least 1 to 3 disc golf baskets in every single school. It's on their playgrounds. Typically, every fraternity has a basket. Every sorority. I mean, you can't drive around town
Wow.
seeing baskets everywhere. Like, I would like to get a count on how many baskets are permanently installed in Emporia, and I can almost guarantee you it would be the #1 city for permanent baskets installed in the ground.
Oh
So
yeah, you guys are well known for being the disc golf center of the universe.
yeah, absolutely. And a lot of that comes from the city of Emporia just really rolling out the red carpet for us. And I've always said smaller communities is absolutely where you can really grow the sport and get it on the map, because Kansas City, a place like Kansas City, you have 1,600 people coming to Kansas City. They're like, okay, we won't feel that. We're not going to feel that impact. In a
Mm.
small town of 28,000, you're going to feel that impact for sure. So, the amount of revenue that's generated that week for the city is fantastic. But that's kind of one side of things. The juniors, the running clinics, we do a lot of work in schools around here and do clinics at schools, and there's a lot that goes into that. And I think that's a great way to grow the sport. The other one is kind of like you had touched on, was the media side of things. And we were one of the first companies to present it to one of the bigger broadcasting networks on CBS Sports, and have them showcase the Dynamic Discs Open last year on CBS Sports. And I know there's a lot of mixed emotions about it because not everybody has CBS Sports and this, that, and the other. But it's
It's
baby
a
steps.
stepping stone.
You got to start somewhere, and Adam Zucker is a fantastic guy, and he loves disc golf now, and he saw an opportunity and wanted to jump all over it. So I thank him, and yeah, I believe we're kind of in the works of doing something again this year. And I know the Disc Golf Pro Tour is also in the works of doing something with ESPN2 again, and potentially featuring more events, which would be awesome. I mean, that on ESPN2 was pretty dang cool to turn on and get to watch everybody compete at that event, the finale. It was so cool to watch, and not just that, but see like all the manufacturers' actual commercials on TV. Was like, what? Like, is this a YouTube video I'm watching? Because this is what I'm used to seeing on YouTube. So, that was really cool to see. And I think those are kind of two great ways to design the course. It's kind of, or just to grow the sport rather, is grassroots from the junior side of things, and the bigger picture things from more big mainstream media.
Okay. Is there anything you think that professional disc golfers, other than just playing really good disc golf, can do to help grow the sport?
I absolutely think there is. I know a lot of our team, we have incentives in place for them to host clinics and run clinics, and we give them a lot of opportunities to host events and get our discs in people's hands and get their name out there. There's some other companies now that have really stepped up in their social media game, but for many years, Dynamic was one of the top companies out there doing media stuff, and nobody else is really doing it. And it's pretty cool to see where it's grown to, and more people are doing that. But absolutely. I think that some of the top players in their off time, if they would do more clinics, more running of events, more schools, presentations, demonstrations, those kind of things, it just goes so far. It absolutely does. And with like Jay and Des down in Texas, the Edge program, that's such a big deal for the growth of the sport, because they're talking to thousands, literally thousands and thousands of kids every single year about disc golf and doing demonstrations for them. And I've done a lot of demonstrations and a lot of clinics for kids in schools around here in Emporia. And, one thing that they absolutely love is if you come out and you kind of show off a little bit and throw some putts or make a big putt. Or one other thing that we've done is every year at homecoming for Emporia State University is the last couple of years, Paige Shue and I have gone out to the stadium and thrown shots during halftime. And we'll kind of get a couple people out of the crowd and ask if they think that they can out throw us, and we let them throw from like the 50-yard line, and then we're trying to throw through the uprights and all that. So that's really getting a lot of eyeballs on our sport.
Yeah.
And those demonstrations, people see disc golf and they know what disc golf is, but until you physically see someone throw a disc like over 450 feet, your mind gets blown right then, and you want to be able to do that, and especially kids. And that's one thing that I kind of want to wrap back around to, is when you're teaching kids, the best thing to do is not kind of, just illustrate it for them. Like, here's how you do it. Now go do it. If you have a half an hour to teach a kid how to play disc golf, spend 5 minutes teaching them how to grip a disc and how to throw it. And then the other 25, just letting them rip, because that's what they want to do. That's all they care about. And as soon as they make that one shot, they're hooked.
Right. And I think when you were in disc golf and you're consistently in it, like you, and sort of like me as well, you tend to not appreciate how fast this thing is actually growing from objectively. Disc golf has taken off
Yeah.
We were just talking about podcasts earlier. There were like 3 podcasts when the original Zen Disc Golf podcast was out, Disc Golf Answer Man and the Disc Golf Show. Now you say you look it up and it's just like it's exploded. Now some of that is people know what podcasts are more today than they did back then. But like but you can see it and you can feel that it is growing exponentially on its own. But all
100%.
these
100%. And I see that not just as an old player, but as a team manager now too. Cause these contracts that players are getting now are being discussed about is just insane when not 10 years ago, like 10 years ago, players were not getting paid, maybe a
right.
couple of them were getting some money here on the side or getting entry fees paid, that kind of thing. But not these like big zero salaries that people are kind of asking for or receiving nowadays,
Yeah, and let's talk about that. Let's talk about sponsorship for a second, since that's part of your expertise in these contracts. Let's say a young player's coming up and they're like you. They're like, I'm getting good at this. I'm getting better. I think I'm ready to reach out for sponsorship. Can you discuss what the sponsorships typically entail and how they would go about getting those?
Sure. So, for us at Dynamic Discs, we're one of the only companies. I know other people do sponsor some AMs, but we're big on that grassroots side of things. And we really feel that ambassadors really push the sport as well. Store owners, tournament directors, those are the kind of people that we want kind of under our umbrella because they're really doing a big thing to grow the sport and push our brand and push just the sport in general to that next level. So we have a lot of amateurs on our team, and it's not all about how well you play. It's about how you act, how you carry yourself on the course, how respectful you are to others, and that kind of thing is kind of what we look for in a player. What kind of clinics are you running? How many events are you doing? Are you running our events? Are you running our? We have a handful of tournament in a box series events that we host, from Winter Marksman League to Trilogy Challenges. There's just so many of them. The match play that is really, in my opinion, that match play is flying under the radar because that thing is, I think we're in our 4th year now of doing it, the amateur match play. And it's just, a lot of people don't even know about it, but first place in that wins 18 veteran baskets and discs for life. I mean, that's
Wow.
insane. It's kind of like you're automatically invited into Dynamic Disc sponsorship with that, but it's cool. I mean, that's not too many. That's a big prize. That's got to be one of the bigger amateur prizes out there, and it's really cool how it works. Every state can have a representative come down and play, but as far as the sponsorship goes, whenever you're ready to reach out, I mean, we always have an open link on our website that you can fill out and it's kind of like a resume that you put in there and talk about your name, your PDGA number, kind of the basics. And then obviously, what do you do to grow the sport? How many events do you run? Do you run events? Are you a current PDGA member? What are your goals? Those kind of things is what we really look at. And it's difficult because right now it's just me and another guy that has to go through all those. And there's a lot of them that come in. So, picking and choosing. And obviously, somebody hitting me up and saying, hey, this person would be a great addition to the team, that goes far. That really does. If you've got one of our current tour players, like if somebody hits me up and says, hey, Oakley told me to hit you up to get a sponsorship on the team or to see what that looks like, and obviously just like any other team, we have different levels of team, anywhere from our junior team all the way up to our world champion team, so obviously the higher up that chain you get, the more in detail your contract gets, whether you're getting paid or you're getting a disc or what that looks like. But I would say our ambassadors and juniors and those lower level teams are just as important as our top tour players.
Now, would you say that a lot of times the ambassadors feed into the top tour players, or do you get a lot of top tour where you pull from outside?
Um, kind of a combination of that. Now, when you're a top tour player, you're obviously you're out there looking for what's best for you,
Mm-hmm.
So currently, all of our tour team is players that we've had for a few years now, and like Paige, for instance. Paige Shu is just fantastic person. I love her to death, and she's been a part of the team since 2010. And that was back before we were even manufacturing discs, So
Right.
when we started manufacturing, she stayed with us and she won her world title with us. And she's not going anywhere. You know what I mean? She's like a franchise player is what I like to call her. So she's one of those that's definitely come up from the junior ranks through the pro career. But the other guys that we have, like an Eric Oakley, AJ Risley, Zach Melton, those guys have kind of come over from other manufacturers. And I think that's great as well. As long as we're all on the same page and we're all being taken care of, that's really at the end of the day all that matters.
And how is Dynamic different as a sponsor than maybe some of the others? You don't have to badmouth anybody. I'm just,
I honestly don't have a lot of experience with other, with the exception of Discraft, because I was sponsored with Discraft for 10 years of my career.
right.
And this kind of goes back to what we talked about earlier of we weren't getting paid back then,
Totally different
ball game back then. So, I'm pretty sure we're pretty close across the board. I talk with Jonathan Poole quite often, who is the Innova team manager for Innova over there, and we talk all the time about players. Like, are you going after this guy or girl? Like if so, we'll kind of back off. So we have that respect for each other.
That's really cool. That's really neat. That's good information.
And I've had a lot of respect for Jonathan over the years. I've known him for many, many years. I've got a lot of respect for him. I think he does for me as well. And we just don't want to come in and snipe anybody. That's kind of not our game plan. If somebody wants to come talk to us and we want to put out a good contract for them, we would be more than happy to talk.
That's awesome. That's cool that y'all can talk across and respect the competition, but also be respectful of the competition as well.
Absolutely. And as we've all mentioned, we're still babies in this sport. The sport is still a baby. As much as we've grown, we've still got a lot of growing to do.
Yeah. Well, Eric, great conversation so far. We'll go ahead and we'll bring it to somewhat of a close. Okay. But before we close the conversation, I'd like to give my listeners a takeaway that they can take to the course. And you being probably one of the best putters in history, you're known as your putters just don't touch the ground. And also being a spin putter versus a push putter, which is not exactly the most popular style of putting these days. Correct. Could you talk about spin putting and how you develop that and why that's the route that you go?
Sure. That's a really easy answer for me because as I've mentioned earlier in this podcast that I'm in Kansas. I grew up playing in Kansas, and we have a lot of wind out here that you've probably seen in all of our GBO videos. So developing that spin putt was kind of forced upon me, I guess you would say, at an early age, and it started working early, and I never really changed it. I had attempted a couple times throughout my career to kind of adapt into a push putt or a spush putt, they call it, kind of a mixture of the two, but nothing ever felt right. Something always felt off with it. I didn't feel like anytime that I tried to do it and I missed, I was always super disappointed in myself because I knew that I could make it as a spin putt, and for me, it was always about confidence, having the confidence to make that putt. Some people always would say, why you spin putt? If you miss, you go so far past the basket, and it's like, well, sure, that could happen, but I'm confident enough to hit the basket. And if I don't, I'm confident enough to hit that comebacker, so I don't free putt too terribly often, or at least I didn't when I was on tour. But that's just kind of how I adapted it. And I think one kind of funny story is Dave Feldberg actually had mentioned one time that a spin putter will never win world championships from here on, and this was in like 2008. So I was mad about that and I had to prove him wrong. So, but Dave and I are really close. We kind of came up in that same era. We traveled some together and we competed a lot together. And my first trip to Europe actually was on it's a pretty crazy trip. It was like Dave Feldberg, myself, Cale LaVisca, Will Schustrick, Paul Macbeth, Paul Ulibarri, Nico LaCastro. Those were all of our guys that we went and traveled through Europe. Paige Pierce was there as well. We traveled for like a month through Europe, and it was such a fantastic group of people. It was so much fun.
That's awesome. How about just maybe talk about putting in the wind and, maybe putting in a headwind versus putting in a tailwind?
Yeah, for me, when I'm studying a hole or if I'm on a tee pad and I'm always aware of the wind. Obviously, that's first thing I'm looking for is which direction's the wind coming from and which side of the basket do I want to err on, if I need to err on one side or the other, or play towards or favor one side or the other. And I'll take a headwind putt over a tailwind putt any day of the week. The only exception would be is if it's like a crazy death putt on the side of a hill with headwind or something like that.
Right.
For me, a headwind, I always made a lot of headwind putts because of the force that I put on the disc. As much power and pop as I put on it with a little nose up, I knew it was going to lift, and I knew exactly what angle to put it on. And you don't have to throw it super hard. You just got to put the right spin on it, and that disc just wants to float in the air. And as it gains traction with a tailwind, I never knew if it was going to drop, lift, or when it was going to drop and lift. And most of the times, if it drops right in front of the basket and you hit front edge of that basket, there's a good chance you're rolling and then wind wobbling all over the place. So for me, headwind was always something I looked for. And I think it was just a confidence thing because I knew exactly what height I needed to put on a disc. No matter what the speed of the wind was, I knew exactly where I needed to put it. And I always felt confident in making it.
Right on. Well, Eric, thank you so much for being on the podcast tonight and taking your time. I know you're a busy dude. You're doing so many things for the sport, and we all appreciate you.
I appreciate that. I had a great time. I appreciate you reaching out and asking me to come on, and I'm glad to see you're back at it again.